I do want to also mention, and I thank Tina for some of her comments, when I was talking about Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi. And Assembly Anthony Brindisi, as I had mentioned, his aide had been arrested, and there's a lot of questions that are brought up in there. But I want to also include the thoughts that Tina brought up, because she says, first, she mentioned that she can't agree with me about Anthony Brindisi. Shame on him, and he should be aware. She goes on to say that so many people live secret lives, and no person can be responsible for the actions of others and not knowing if they've kept it hidden. And you're right. And to be fair, it isn't something, obviously, if he's been doing this, if this is something that's been a repeat, or even if it's the first time, it's not necessarily something that Anthony Brindisi would know about or any of his other members of staff. Although we tend, when you work with someone for 8 years, my position is that if you worked with someone for 8 years, you tend to know things about that person. Maybe no one knew about it. But I don't give the benefit of doubt to any politician, whether they're a Republican, conservative, libertarian, Democrat, progressive, it doesn't matter. Because they're members of their elected officials, I hold them to a higher standard. And the presumption is, prove to me that this is not something that's been hidden, especially in New York State. In New York State, we have far too many politicians who have consistently gone out there and abused their power, abused their position, and hidden it from the public, have made public denials of committing crimes like Sheldon Silvers, as an example, or Dean Skelos, as another example, where they've said, oh, no, I'm not abusing my power, but then we find out, yes, they have, and people knew about it for decades and did nothing about it. We have a governor at the moment who is completely surrounded by people that he's called as close to him as his own brother, and yet they've committed all these acts of corruption, and he has no idea about it. It's hard to believe. So in that vein and under that understanding that New York is incredibly corrupt, and we see often that, politicians have someone fall on their sword, that they deflect, and they try and hide from these things that we later find out they knew all about. So yeah, I take the position, and maybe it's wrong, that someone probably knew. In politics, where it's such a insidious and closely watched industry, where people know about what everyone does and watches everyone all the time. I have people who watch me on a regular basis when I'm out and about just living my life. I know other people do it to other politicians. We know that, especially during campaign seasons, that campaigns hire people to follow candidates and their staff 24/7. We have Maxine Waters encouraging people to verbally attack politicians and staff members and individuals in the administration that have nothing to do with policy, and tracking them down in their regular lives just because they eat at a restaurant that may have Mexican food, and they attack them because of immigration policy. I mean, this is the nature of where we are. So yeah, I'm not necessarily forgiving. Blame me for that. But Tina also goes on that she did agree that if it comes out that Anthony Brindisi knew, or his staff knew about this, that it was hidden or that it was ignored, that he has done this more than once, John Stemmen has done this more than once, then that is a problem, and that the fault would lie with Mr. Brindisi and his staff, and that should be found out. She goes on to say, by the way, okay, and that's when she mentioned the mic. Okay, so let me give that caveat. And again, I'm not saying that this was absolutely a factual, that they knew. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, in my opinion, given the nature of New York politics and the amount of time, if they didn't know, they probably should have. But, then again, people have private lives that they keep very secret. I admit that. Maybe I'm overreactive. Well, then again, I'm a political pundit. It's it's the nature of the job that sometimes we're overreactive. And this is a personal view. I'm not saying that, well, it is somewhat of a professional view as well, that these questions are questions. They have to be answered. And the reason for that is we need to remove this. Whether you like Anthony Brindisi or not, this scandal has to be answered and cleared and gone. Otherwise, the effectiveness of Congress and bills that get passed, whether you like them or not, that he's trying to put through, which, his bill on veteran suicides, anything that prevents veteran suicides, I support. It can't get done when there's a sex scandal that's in question there. And I guarantee you in 2020, this is going to come back up. This is a question. It's a character question. And it's going to come up. And no one wants to be attached to that. No one in politics wants to be attached to a sex scandal. It doesn't help anyone. So this is why I say that. Maybe I'm wrong. And it's perfectly fine. Call me out. Mr. Brindisi, Anthony, if you disagree, call me out. You can tell me you think I'm wrong or that I've gone too far. You think I'm overreacting. That's perfectly fine. Tina did. Others will, and that's okay. But this is the way I see it, and I just want to share that with you. But that's how we have this conversation. But I think when we come down to the questions I've asked, I think everyone reasonably would be able to say, yeah, those are questions that need to be answered. They need to be clear for the public, for the constituents. This is in the best interest of everyone to have answers and not avoid that.